Can I get a perfect score on a blog post astronomy quiz? It had been a while since I did a science themed video. So this week I decided to have some element of science in every single video I did. So I asked my friends to send me the most interesting astronomy quiz that they could find, and they sent me a blog post by underluckystars.com. It's a 20-question quiz and I'll try to make it as educational as possible. So let's get started. Okay, so astronomy quiz by Nelly English, 18th May 2020. Seems like an old quiz. And this is a beautiful picture. And let's get to the questions right away. And here's question 1. What is our home galaxy called? Okay, so we have an easy one to start with. So our home galaxy is called the Milky Way, and the reason it's called the Milky Way is because ancient astronomers looked at different patches of the sky and a certain band of the sky looked sort of fuzzy and milky, and they named that band the Milky Way. And later on in the 1900s or so, we realized that there are a lot more galaxies outside our own, so we decided to name our galaxy the Milky Way galaxy, and the outside galaxies some other names like Andromeda. That's option B in our case. So let's get on to the second question, and the sun is a star. What type of star? Okay, so the three options are actually three different types of stars, so that's a good job by the quiz master. So stars are formed out of clouds of gas called nebulae. So because of gravity and other processes, these nebulae sort of collapse onto each other to form a star. After a short while of being in the protostar phase, this clump of gas then becomes a full-fledged star that we call a main sequence type star. In most cases. Now you might have heard that the way stars shine is they fuse hydrogen nuclei in the core of the stars. What happens when these hydrogen nuclei are depleted is the star has to start fusing helium, and because of a complex horde of processes that happens, the outer layers of the star start expanding, and that makes it a supergiant star. This basically happens at the end of a star's life. Our sun is in the middle of its lifetime, so our sun is a main sequence type star. By the way, a red dwarf star is basically a small star that has a very cool temperature because of which it looks red. So let's move on to the next question. What is the visible part of the sun called? The lithosphere, the photosphere, or the fire layer? Because I don't think there's any scientific astronomical term called the fire layer, so it's not C for sure. And I think the lithosphere is the landmass part of our Earth. So the Earth has, I think, the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, and the biosphere living on top of it, and the atmosphere enveloping all around it. So out of the remaining options, the answer is the photosphere. So let's move on to the next one. If you have your own star map, you'll see many constellations. How many constellations are officially recognized? So this is honestly not a very good question, and that's because of the kinds of options that are provided to us. So first of all, let's just rule out option C. So if something is officially recognized, then usually a human should be able to count that particular object to be able to officially ratify it, right? And in this case, I highly doubt that a human can count all the way up to 1 trillion. Understanding what constellations are, by the way, when you look at the sky, there are lots of stars that you can see in the sky. And these stars were condensed into some different forms of patterns. For example, Cassiopeia was the queen, or Ursa Major was the great bear. And these patterns were coined thousands of years ago by ancient Greeks and Romans. I'm not entirely sure who exactly. And over time, many of these cultures agreed upon some fixed constellations that we recognize officially today, which means 1 trillion is definitely not the answer. Now, the other two answers, 88 and 127, the reason I don't like this question is because both of these answers are extremely close to each other, so you cannot logically rule out one or the other. So I think I'll just have to tell you the answer without much explanation. The answer is 88 officially recognized constellations. I just know the number off the top of my head, but it was equally likely I did not, in which case I would get this wrong as well. So let's get on to the next question. What does the term equinox mean? Okay, so this one is interesting. So what happens is, the Earth, let's just assume the stick is the axis of the Earth. The Earth revolves around the sun and it goes round and around like this, right? But the thing is, the plane of the orbit, this plane called the ecliptic plane, is not perpendicular to this axis all the time. It's not like the equator of the Earth falls exactly on the plane of the orbit of the sun, right? So this axis is tilted about 23.5 degrees from the perpendicular to this plane. And because of that, the Earth orbits the sun like this. And so at some point, the North Pole is pointing towards the sun, and about 6 months later, the North Pole is pointing away from the sun. And this is what gives us seasons. This would be summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere, because the northern hemisphere is pointing towards the sun, so it receives more sunlight. And on the other hand, the south pole is pointing towards the sun, so we have summer over there. Now, as you might notice, there are two very special configurations when this happens. There is this point over here between the summer and winter, and this point over here between winter and summer. At these 2 points, the axis is actually perpendicular to the line joining the centers of the earth and the sun. And this is what you call autumn and spring. Both of these are equinoxes, meaning equal day and equal night. So out of our given options, the answer is option B, the day and night are of equal length.